Hello everybody, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. It is Monday, March 27th, and thank you so much for taking time out of your week, even though it's only Monday. You may be watching this on replay later on in the week or something. I appreciate you taking time to watch this video. I know we're all busy, and my goal as a Stampin' Up demonstrator is really to show people how to find their creativity and make cards, even if you think, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I want to be able to show you that you can, because I used to be that way as well. I've been with Stampin' Up for about 10 years now, but I've been making cards for many, many more years than that. My goal is to simply spread joy one card at a time, and I hope to be able to help others do that as well. We've had a fairly uneventful week here at our house. No snow, which has been awesome. We actually, yesterday John went out and shoveled some snow off the snowbanks at the end of our driveway so we can actually see both directions up and down the street again as we back out of our driveway. I'm going to be volunteering at an Easter egg hunt this Saturday, and initially our worry was, is the park going to be clear of snow? And I just heard tonight that we're actually going to have snow on April 1st, which is some kind of horrible, cruel joke, but we'll make it work anyhow. We've got a contingency plan in place for that. Got to spend some time with Cece yesterday, so that was a lot of fun. And other than that, you know, life is just moving on here. So tonight I've got a really fun card that I am excited to share with you. I was actually just kind of scrolling through Pinterest tonight trying to find a card that I could share, and it's a really cool pocket card. I like cards that have something to them, whether it's a fun fold or there's just a surprise element to the card. That's kind of what I like to make and share with people, and so that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. We are quickly approaching the end of the Stampin' Up catalog year. The existing mini catalog and the annual catalog will be ending on April 30th. Hi, Ann. So if there are things that you want out of those catalogs, now is the time to be. I'm making sure I went live here. Yes, I did. I always worry I go on my personal page instead of on my business page here. If there are things in the catalog that you want to get, particularly, again, those retiring in colors, the pale papaya, polished pink, fresh freesia, evening evergreen, and soft succulent, they have proven to be very popular, and there's a lot of people sad that they're going out. And so I just want to let you know, hey, these things are out there. If you want those colors, get them now, because as soon as it's announced in that retiring list when it comes out in 2 days, those things are going to go right away. So on Wednesday, I will know what items are going to carry over, what items are retiring, and what things will be available. One item I want to share with you that's been kind of a secret in the mini catalog are these blending brushes. We now carry 2 sizes. So one is the original size, and then there's just this mini version of it. And this is really good for getting into kind of smaller places. If you have a stamp you just want to fill in a little bit and blend around, these little ones are really good for that. So I'm gonna just let you know that those are out there. And other than that, I would like to just jump and get going. My card tonight is going to feature the Regency Park Suite of products. You've seen me use this one quite a few times. It was one of the first ones I got out of the mini catalog. And this card layout works really well with these papers. And like I said, I was scrolling through Pinterest and I found this card by Karen Hallam, Hallam. And I just really like this layout, so I'm excited to share that with you. So I'm going to go ahead and flip my camera over. Apologize for my hand being in the way and seeing my ceiling and all of that stuff, but it is what it is. And let me get that popped in here. And then I'm always anxious to get it plugged in, because the last thing I want in a live video is to run out of juice in my phone. And I think we got it. Let me move my camera stand and my fancy fancy camera stand that holds my phone there. All right, so what I would like to do is first show you, I'm a little crooked in my phone, it looks like. First show you my card. I'll try to get stuff there. I think we're a little bit straighter. Wish that light from my ceiling didn't just glare down on here, but it is what it is. Here is the card that I want to share with you. And this is like a pocket card. And so this is your actual card. Looks like I've got a little bit of adhesive running over. And it flips open. I used some of the designer series paper to carry through on the inside of the card. Let's celebrate you and happy birthday. And so I'm going to show you how to make this card. This is one where you may want to write down measurements so that you can recreate it. Hi, Jose. Hi, Cindy. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, Pam. Let's go ahead and get started here. There are a lot of measurements to this. And so just bear with me as I go through. And again, I am using the stamps from the Petal Park as well as from the Regency or Sentimental Park stamps. And then I am also using the Petal Park Builder Punch. That's the one that looks like this. So let's go ahead and get started. I counted out 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8 different stamps that I'm using on this card. So, you know, it'll be kind of fun to see what we can come up with here. And I think you're going to like this card. So again, this is just the card base is just a 4 1/4 by 5, or yeah, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then it's layered with the designer series paper and this little teeny pocket here. And it's one of those easy to make cards, but it looks like you worked really hard on it. So those are my kind of cards. So I am choosing to do this one in, with this as my primary designer series paper and Petal Pink as my base. And just combining some of the different patterns. Another thing that I like about this card is I've got actually 3 different pieces of designer series paper that I can show off. And that helps me use that paper up too, which, you know, has been one of my goals. Not going to quite hit it by the end of the calendar year, but I've used way more designer series paper than I have any other year. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I've got a piece of Petal Pink cardstock here that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I have a piece of the, I want to make sure I give you the right name for the designer series paper, because sometimes I make up my names. The designer series paper, it's on page 31 in the catalog. It's the Regency Park 6x6 designer series paper. This sheet is 4 by 5 1/4. And then I needed to take a piece of the Petal Pink cardstock that measured 3 1/2 by 3 1/2, and I cut it on the diagonal to get my triangle. This is a great little card that if you prep 2, you'd have all the pieces to quickly make 2 cards. Because I'm doing different colors, I'm not going to do that right now, but I will come back and create a second card because I've got these triangles cut already. And then I also needed a piece of coordinating designer series paper that measured 3 1/4 by 3 1/4, which of course is going to hit that part of my triangle. And then I have a piece of basic white cardstock that measures 3 1/4 by 8 1/2, and you scored it 4 1/4. And then another piece of designer series paper. There's my third pattern that I'm bringing in. This piece measures 3 by 4. And then I have a piece of cardstock that I measured out roughly 2 1/2 by 2 1/2. I used one of the stitched square, stylish shapes dies in the square. And so this piece just depends on what size you're using in the center. Try to get my phone to focus on this, but I don't know if it's going to or not. There we go. Sometimes it gets dizzy and doesn't focus. Anyhow, that's one of the stylish shapes on that. And then I have a piece of basic white cardstock that measures 2 1/8 by 2 1/8. So it's just 1/8 of an inch smaller on my layer. You can do whatever you want. And then I took another piece of the designer series paper and that measures 3/4 of an inch by 3 1/4 inches, and that's just going to go on the inside of the card. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start by doing my stamping. I like to do that just because it gives the ink a chance to dry, and I am using Night of Navy, and I find that sometimes my darker ink colors just take a little bit longer to dry. And so I'm going to do the Let's Celebrate. And to help me place this, I'm just going to stick my Night of Navy square onto here, and I almost forgot, because these are photopolymer stamps, I need to make sure I've got my foam pad underneath too. So I'm just going to put this on here for placement. I don't have it adhered or anything, but it'll make sure that I stamp my images in the right spot. So we're going to put Let's Celebrate. And in the past, when I've used these stamps, I've tried really hard to get everything lined up, and that was causing me stress that I didn't want. And so I decided this time when I add the U, I'm just going to kind of line it up on the right side, and then I don't have to worry about whether I've got it centered or not correctly. I can just stamp it on here and be good to go. I am cleaning my stamps off right away with my chamois, mostly so that I don't stick my hand in it and get ink on stuff. And then on the inside of this card, I also need to stamp my happy birthday. And so I'm just going to fold my basic white cardstock in half and use my bone folder to burnish it. And I'm going to grab my happy birthday stamp. You may notice the black I'm using isn't as thick as some of the others. This is one of the blacks you get in the Paper Pumpkin kits. If you subscribe to Paper Pumpkin, the first kit that you receive, you will get a block. It's a smaller acrylic block than our normal ones in terms of the thickness. But I needed a lot of, oh, look, I got a little bit of ink up there. We're not going to worry about that. Sometimes that happens. So I just needed one more block, and so that's what this one is. And like I said, it is narrower and it doesn't have the grips, but it does exactly what I need it to do when I'm looking for extra stamps, or when I'm looking for extra blocks here. Okay, and then we're going to set that aside. The other thing that I need to do is stamp this and create my flowers. And so I am actually going to stamp on scrap paper, because when I create the leaves on this little piece of paper, these leaves I need to stamp off. So I'm going to start first by doing my floral images. Now, when I did this card, I stamped them both in Balmy Blue, and on this card, I'm actually going to stamp them in Balmy Blue with Night of Navy as my accent piece. And so with these stamps, one of the things that I have found is that it helps me line them up better if I do the outline piece first. And so that's the image that I've got here, and I've just got a scrap of basic white. I've also learned that if I put my image towards the bottom, that helps when I put it in my punch, and just makes it a little quicker to punch things out. Make sure I get a good coating. All right, and then the next thing I'm going to do is take the solid floral, and I'm going to use Balmy Blue. I'm going to go ahead and grab my shaded spruce while I'm up there. I have all my inks in a storage unit at the front of my desk here, so it's easy for me to grab colors out. I used to have them off to the side and behind me, and I found I never put my colors away, so I made the simple switch of putting them right in front of me, and I find that I get stuff put away a whole lot better. And then I'm just working to line this up, and I don't talk and line up very well, so I think I'm pretty close right there. These are pretty easy to line up. Like I said, it's just when I'm talking. Look at that. Geez, that's almost perfect. That doesn't always happen, does it? Okay. And then, let me close this so I don't put my hand in it. And I don't think, it's Flirty Flamingo. Maybe this is the color. I do have petal pink. I didn't think I had petal pink in blends. And so I'm just going to take my blends, and I know it's going to smear a little bit. That's okay. This end is not working real well. Petal pink doesn't show up super well, but all I'm doing is filling in my centers so that there's a little bit of color on the petals. And because I'm using alcohol on ink that's not quite dry, it is smearing just a little bit, but that's all right. My world isn't going to end, and hopefully yours won't either. All right, I'm going to set that aside and let that finish drying, and then I'm going to grab my scrap paper, and you can see I've already done a little bit of stamping on here. One of the things with these leaf stamps is because it's a fairly large image, and it's got this opening in it, sometimes you can get off just a little bit. So what I do first is stamp the outline part, and then I place the solid stamp on top of my paper just to make sure I have everything lined up right, and put it on a block at that point. I just set my block down on top of it once I know I have it lined up correctly. And then I don't have to worry about things being off kilter a little bit or anything. And this, I'm just kind of going corner to corner. Nothing fancy about it, but I am stamping off the sides of my paper, which is being done on purpose. And then the next thing I'm going to do is come in with the solid image, and I've already lined this up. I didn't want to take time doing that while we were stamping live here. I'm going to ink this up, and Shaded Spruce is a pretty dark color, so for my leaves I am actually going to do second generation stamping, and so that just means I am stamping off. I'm going to go in the same spot, that way I know where the wet ink is. Once, not pressing down super hard, and then I'll bring my image back here and work to line my stamps up. And I actually find it's kind of easier if I do the little leaves as my starting point for lining up, and then focus on the bigger leaves. I'm just going to put that on here, flick it off, and it's a little bit off, but for what we're doing here tonight, it's going to be just fine, because I think when we're all done here, that isn't even going to show. And then I've got just these little dots that I'm going to stamp on some more, and I'm going to use a little bit of my Night of Navy for that. This just adds a little bit of detail and hopefully will hide some of my smearing right there. I found it was just a little bit too white for my tastes when I didn't use these. And with this dot stamp, you can see I'm picking up ink on the interior of the stamp. If you use just a real light touch when you're stamping it, you're just fine. You don't want to press down super hard. As soon as you do that, then you're going to pick up that background. But if you have a real light touch to it, don't worry about it. Okay, that takes care of the stamping, so we can clear that out. Let me get this stamped image cleaned up. And I noticed I got a little bit of Night of Navy on the tip of my finger, so we're going to get rid of that. And now we can start assembling the, oh no, we got to punch out the flowers. So this punch matches the stamp exactly. And so I always try to stamp it, like I said, a little bit lower on the bottom. And then I can line things up a little bit better when I do that. Just looking to see if I've got a scrap of paper. And I do. I'm going to add just a little bit of adhesive. This piece of paper was bigger when I started it with the first card. Come on. Which meant it was easy to get in and out of the punch. Now that I tore off what I'd already punched out, I'm finding it's a little bit shorter, which makes it harder to manipulate. And so I just take a scrap piece of cardstock and tape it to the back of my card. And then once I slide this in, I can use that to maneuver and to get things lined up. And I just kind of start focusing on one flower. And once I have that in a good position, then I just make sure I get the other ones lined up. And I start to close my punch just a little bit because it sort of holds the paper in place but allows me to make adjustments. And it's funny when you're going through the camera, sometimes it can be a little harder to see than when you're not. But there we go. And then I can just get rid of my little tool there. That's a great tip whenever you're using smaller pieces of paper. And then I am going to put a mini dimensional on the back of the little flower. And then I'll use regular size dimensionals on the other flowers. Okay, so we're set those aside, and now we're just going to start to assemble this card. And this part is really easy. So I've got my designer series paper, and remember, don't put a lot of pressure on this when you're using it, and kind of make that check mark. And you shouldn't have too many problems with it not coming out correctly. And this I'm just going to center then on that base piece of paper. And again, the base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so the card ends up being a standard card size. And this is 4 by 5 1/4. And then I'm taking just one piece of my cardstock for my triangle, along with one piece of this designer series paper. And the nice thing is, if you bring this up to the edge, the designer series paper to the edge of your triangle, you're pretty much going to have even spacing already right there. So the thing with this, because you want your card to tuck into it, you do not want to put tape all over the back of this. And so what I found works best for me is I just take a little bit of my tear and tape and I run it down the two sides that I want taped. The reason I don't use the tape runner is it's a little bit wider than the tear and tape. And I don't use glue because if I should get a little heavy-handed with my liquid adhesive, it could split out further into the card. You can use whatever adhesive that you're comfortable with. I'm just doing what works for me. And then if any of it hangs over the edge, just roll it back over. And then again, just keep it so that it's on the edge of your triangle. And then you just want to make sure you've got about the same distance from here to here and here to here. And put it down. So that part's a pretty simple process. And then, oh, you know what? Actually, this piece could have been all adhered because it's my top layer. It's the next part where we want to use that tear and tape. You can use regular adhesive on the back of that because that's just getting tucked in. Doesn't matter that I did it this way. Now, though, this one does matter. Sorry about that. Here's where you really want to make sure you're using just whatever adhesive you can control the best so that we keep this part open. I was one step ahead of myself there. Fortunately, it's not the kind of thing that's going to create a problem. All right, now this just gets lined up in the corner here and along the edges. Now, if you are using the tear and tape, just keep in mind that that is a really sticky tape. So kind of once you commit to it, you're committed. A little fuzzy hanging off that one edge there. All right. And so now I've got my pocket to put my card into once I'm ready to do that. The next thing that we're going to do is actually assemble all but our floral pieces. And that's because it's easier to adhere everything without the dimensionals getting in the way. And then we're just going to center this on the square using the framelits and have the die and having it so close in size makes it really easy to line this one up. All right, then we are going to take and put this layer onto here. Like I said with this card, there's lots of pieces to it, but it really isn't that hard to create. And I actually think this would be fairly easy to do, kind of assembly line style. And so I'm going to kind of center this so I have the same amount of space top left and right, not top left and right. I do know my left from my right. All right, so that's not quite centered. I'm gonna see if I can peel it off. Oh, looks like, again, sometimes I try not to let that little bit of stuff bother me. Other times I just have to fix it. Okay. Now it's a little crooked. All right, we're just going to leave it. Quit looking at it, Carol. And then the last thing that we want to do on the interior here is add a little bit of designer series paper. Part of what's happening is my dispenser's almost out. And this, like I said, this is optional. I just am trying to use my designer series paper. So I thought this made a nice decoration for the inside of my card. You can use whatever pattern you want. Then we're going to attach this layer to the front of this card. So you can see why I didn't want to put my dimensionals on, or my flowers on right away with the dimensionals, just so that I could get these layers assembled first. And again, I'm off camera, I'm sorry. We're going to get this centered right here. And we don't want to tape this down because we want that to be able to slide in and out. So that's just going to sit in our pocket. So the last thing we need to do before we add a few embellishments is just to add our flowers. And I'm going to put the big one here. You can put these on however you want. And normally I would say I'm going to go ahead and use these adhesive back Milky Dots, but we have sold out of all of those. And so instead, I have grabbed the heart pearls from the annual catalog. And I took these because to me, this seems like a card that you might send somebody that you love. And so we can add some heart pearls to this. And I'm just kind of randomly placing them. We'll do 2 little ones and a big one. And just keep them, keep them here in the corners. I should be using my Take Your Pick tool. And that just adds a little bit of bling to the front of my card. And you know what, because I am not putting them in the center on this card, this is worthy of a Wink of Stella moment. And in fact, I think I'm going to put Stella over all of my flowers. I love Stella because it adds just enough flash without overwhelming a card, and it dries so quickly. One of my favorite products in the catalog. All right, so we have our card insert, and we're just going to pop it into the card base. And even with that pearl in the lower corner, it still works. If you're concerned about that, you know, being an issue, we could put it up in that corner, and then we don't have to worry about that so much. And I kind of like to place mine then so it's centered on the card base as well, just because that's how I roll. And so there you go. You've got 2 pocket fold cards that really show off your designer series paper. I think that combinations are endless. I like that we can combine different patterns to create this card as well. That's not something I used to do, mixing my patterns a whole lot, and I've learned to really like that with the designer series paper that Stampin' Up creates, simply because it's so easy to do. So there you go. Let me run through measurements real quick here again in case you missed one at the very beginning. The card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This layer of designer series paper is 4 by 5 1/4. This half triangle comes from a 3 1/2 by 3 1/2 square piece of cardstock, and the designer series paper is 3 1/4 by 3 1/4, and you just cut it on the diagonal. And then if you line it up right with the edge, you get even spacing on the outside edges. And then this card piece is 3 1/4 by 8 1/2, scored at 4 1/4. This little piece is 3/4 by 3 1/4. This designer series paper is 3 by 4. This cardstock, the Night of Navy, is 2 1/2 by 2 1/2. And then the basic white is 2 1/8 by 2 1/8. And really, it's going to depend, these 2 pieces are going to depend on what shape you're using, you know, what die cut. I just think you want to watch your layers and cut it accordingly based on the die that you're using. And then, of course, scraps for the flowers that pop up there. So have a lot of fun making this card. If you do, please be sure to post it down below. If you like this video, would appreciate it if you can give me a thumbs up, a like, share it with your friends. I also post these videos usually by Tuesday, Wednesday night onto YouTube. So if you have people that would like to see this without being on Facebook, because they may not have a Facebook page, direct them over to my YouTube channel and they'll be able to watch it there as well. Again, I appreciate it, and hope you have a great week, and we will see you next week for Make It Monday. Bye-bye.